I'm Steven Davidson. Welcome to Looking Back on a Life That Didn't Happen, episode 28, starring the brilliant Jo Caulfield. This magnificent show involves me interviewing my guests about a life they haven't actually lived, an alternative history they know absolutely nothing about. No one ever sees the questions in advance. They create an entirely new history from improvisation, lies and nonsense, and discuss it with a straight face. Thank you so much to Jo for her time. She is a legendary stand-up comedian, so try and catch her live if you can. She's at the Stand in Edinburgh for the 2022 Fringe, and you can find out about more of her gigs at jocaulfield.com. On with the show. Jo Caulfield, welcome to Looking Back. Before we start, I must congratulate you on your recent award from the Quaker Society for Best Woman in History. Did you agree with the verdict, and do you see yourself at the absolute top of the pile?
Well, I think it's rather rude to say, did I agree with it? Because that sounds like you think I don't deserve to be Best Woman in History. I mean, I think if you look back at everything I've done, I think we can pretty much say I am the best woman in history. So I was pleased. I wasn't happy about sharing it, obviously, but I suppose it's better late than never, so I don't really mind. But I don't think Nadine Dorries is, also the best woman in history, so that was kind of annoying, really. But, it's always nice to get an award.
And what was the trophy, Jo? What was the actual physical trophy?
It's like a rose bowl, so that you can, put flowers in it, I suppose, because it's a woman's award. So they thought, well, we'll want to do something, or I suppose you could make a cake in it as well, It's very nice. And I think it's also made of silver, so part of me is going, well, that's got to be quite hefty if I want to sell it, which I probably will.
That, of course, has not been the only event that has thrown you onto the front page. The Daily Express has attacked you for the development and introduction of Esperanto 3, which is a secret language spoken only by elite-level UK comedians. Now, there's yourself, Connolly, Bridges, McIntyre and Bishop have admitted to being fluent in E3. The question is, why? What do you need it for?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, it was a bit of a joke, but I didn't realise that they actually are fluent in it. And I sort of said, oh yeah, I'm fluent in it, but I'm actually not fluent in it. And I didn't realise, and it has been invented by Michael McIntyre. And I think it is exactly what it seems. It's a thing to keep them at the top. And soon all the TV shows will be done in Esperanto 3. So if you don't speak it, then you're not going on telly. So you'll find quite a lot of inexperienced comics getting on telly, but they speak Esperanto 3, so hence particularly the BBC are very keen on it, so they will be on TV. But so it was the Express got it slightly wrong. I got it wrong because I just said, yes, I can speak it as a joke, and then turned out I was completely wrong and it's a real thing. I didn't know it was a real thing.
So you're distancing yourself from it, Jo?
Well, I am distanced from it because I don't bloody speak it. I wish I did. But it's quite hard to get into learning about it. I think I'm too old to learn a new language now. John Bishop says he speaks it. Oh, I'd be surprised if he actually does. I think, Kevin Bridges definitely does, Michael McIntyre does, and the newer comics do. But I think, to be honest, I think that John Bishop has just said, but the man can barely speak English properly, so I don't think he does speak it.
And there's been a lot of open spot comedians who believe the language was initially created purely to bitch about them in green rooms. So I think you're quite right in just keeping yourself well away from that. To move on, Jo, in the latest edition of the Reader's Digest, you have stated that you'll be taking a year out from comedy in 2024 to focus on mowing the lawns of stately homes. Why is that? Well,
I am a big fan of gardening. I do love gardening. And one of my favourite, just really therapeutic things to do is to mow lawns. And I don't have a lawn myself because I have a small garden and I've paved it. So I thought it would be an ideal thing for me to do. I find it's so relaxing. It's one of those things because it's so just... It's one of the few things, I suppose people call it zen, but it is like you're just in the moment, you're going up and down and up and down. And so I have bought myself a lawnmower and I've got a little sort of dormer van, that I can sleep in as well and just travel around from stately home to stately home. Obviously, officially I haven't asked them or anything, but, everybody's happy if somebody mows their lawn, aren't they? So if I sort of, I thought my plan is to get there at night, do the mowing at night, and then in the morning, like whether it's National Trust or if there's still a family, I think they'll be pleasantly surprised to go, oh, look, she's mown the lawn. I don't see anyone could object. And then I'll just move on to the next one.
I suppose if they challenge you at the gate, it's going to be awkward. But if they look out the window and see you mid-mow, they're going to be pleased, aren't they? It's not going to be like an intruder. It's a good thing.
When I enter, they won't know. I'll pay my whatever it is, £12 to get in. I won't pay for the house ticket. You know, you have usually 2 tickets. I'll just pay for the garden ticket, which is often cheaper. And then I'll be in. So I'll be in the car park and... I don't know what the security's like at night. So they might, if the car park needs to be emptied at night, well, obviously then my whole holiday just goes up shit creek and then it can't be done. But, I don't see what. Then I might change it. Then I could just do houses, couldn't I? Don't have to be stately homes. Then I could just go around big houses and do it. That actually, now you've said that, that's probably easier because I can park nearby, not right in front of their house. And is it,
because I suppose you could, if it was just a push-along mower, you could lob the mower over the wall at some point and then just kind of meet up with the mower and start mowing. But I'm picturing you here on one of the drive-along mowers. Is that the idea?
No, I'm using a petrol mower. It's called a hater, which is a very good mower because I think the drive-along, because part of it is the physicality. That's what I enjoy. And petrol mowers, they are very good. But I wouldn't chuck one over a fence because then there's going to be mess. You do have to be. They're a little bit temperamental, but they really do cut better, I think.
Lastly, Jo, before we delve into your deeply murky past, can we address your recent appearance as a weatherwoman for the BBC? Because I've planned a couple of picnic outings around your forecasts, and I have been absolutely drenched. Do you actually have any training at all in meteorology?
No, absolutely none. But I have been looking at the weather forecasts, and now I live in Scotland. I used to live in London, and since I moved to Scotland, I've noticed that the BBC weather app pretty much just says every day when I look, it goes Scotland, cloudy and rainy and cold. Like today was a perfect example. It was a bright, sunny day. When I looked at the BBC weather app, it said possible snow showers. So that's when, a while ago, when I noticed this, I thought, BBC just make it up randomly. They have areas that they go, Scotland, that'll be cold. The North Manchester, they just go, that'll be raining. And the southwest and southeast, they go, it'll be sunny and lovely because we've got lots of money down here. So basically, so I applied, and obviously I told them that I had qualifications, but you don't even need to pretend to have qualifications. They basically just want somebody who knows where to point at. And as long as you know what the things mean, like the rushing down thing, I know that's either wind or rain. Just say, look, wind, rain, and temperatures. Because it's the person who makes up the map. All I'm doing is just, deciphering what's on the pictures. And people are used to it now, I feel. I think at one point we did used to believe the weather, but now, if I get it wrong, it doesn't matter because everyone just assumes the weather's wrong. And you just go, global warming really affected Edinburgh today, and it did rain when I said it wouldn't rain. And you get away with it.
And is the money any good, Jo, for that kind of job?
Yeah, well, it's sort of equivalent to a gig in, say, a nice club like Glee Club or Comedy Store, same sort of fee as that. So you need to get a one-off fee for each time you do it.
And we just had a tweet from one of your fans, Jo, a Derek Kidd, who says, can you ask Jo why she always hops to the mic at her gigs? What is the hopping all about?
Well, you've got to have a gimmick, haven't you? And people say, especially in comedy, as soon as you come onto the stage, people are judging you. And if you hop, they're going, right, we don't know what that means. This could mean she's the funniest person in the world, or it could mean she doesn't know what she's doing because she's decided to hop. Have you seen anyone hop? No. So it does make you immediately go, I'm interested because she's hopping. It's neither good nor bad. And I think that's a good way to put people. If I just walk, they go, oh God, not again. Another person walking to the mic. Like you've wasted 5 seconds by doing nothing interesting or funny. So I say, as soon as you start, do something.
Right. It's time to redrive the bumpy and at times crash-splattered road that has the modern-day Jo Caulfield as its destination. Are you ready to delve into your murky and at times frightening past?
Well, I'm ready now, I think, yeah. A while ago I may not have been ready, but I feel I could do it now.
OK, let's do it. I will play you a recording of the cat that you grew up with to relax you, and then we will begin. OK, let's do it. You were born in 1990 in South Wales to famous model woman Cindy Crawford and non-entity bus driver Colin Caulfield, who brought you up on a farm. How did those guys get together?
I think she was doing a fashion shoot. And they wanted, it was nice old buses that they had in Wales, and so they were using one of them, and my dad happened to be there. And to be honest, he wasn't that keen on her, but he was sort of standing around and was like, oh, well, I mean, they didn't have a relationship or anything. I think it was very much just a sort of quickie at lunchtime, because obviously being a model, she didn't eat, so she had to fill the time. And my dad was quite a nice looking man. And that was that. And that was the end of them. And I never saw her again. I'm quite glad, really, because I don't know if we'd have much in common, really.
And you've covered this in previous interviews, Jo, but whilst you were growing up with Colin, he only ever owned 3 animals. What were they, and how on earth did the farm survive financially?
Yeah, it had a donkey, which that was the only thing that could sometimes make money, because I would take it out and go, would you like a picture taken with a donkey? And people would pay for that. He seemed to think that the donkey had some sort of intellectual qualities, because he said that he'd studied the donkey and that it had been doing some interesting work in like string theory, quantum physics. But it was quite lazy and it never really came to anything. I think that donkey's doing research that's already been done. Do you know what I mean? I thought it's not really pushing the envelope in any way. But taking it out and people, a little kid will sit on its back, which obviously it found mortifying, but people would give you a £5 or something. So we had that, and we had the cow, which turned out not to be a cow. It turned out to be a bullock that had been castrated, so it couldn't sire and it couldn't give milk, so that was of no use at all. And then we had a chicken who I think gave us 2 eggs, and then was so traumatised by the whole event of how the eggs came out of it. Like, it was quite frightened. It hadn't had any sort of education, and it didn't want to do it anymore, and we didn't force it, really. So that was that, just the 2 eggs. So really, we got by, luckily, because we were on a coal field. So we had coal, and then when they shut the coal mine down, it turned out we had gemstones, so we made money from those.
And at the age of 7, you go on a journey which must have been profoundly character building. You steal your dad's brand new tractor, which was bought with the gemstone money, and you drive it all the way from Cardiff to Stranraer. Do you have any memories of that trip?
It's the best bit is the bit through Wales, because I didn't do M5, M6. I did the small roads through Wales, from South Wales to North Wales, which is absolutely stunning in terms of scenery. And I would recommend that. The awful bit is once you get northwest, you've got to somehow get around the Birkenhead, Liverpool, Manchester. That busy bit there is awful in a tractor. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. But after that, you can go along what is the old A6, not the actual M6, to Stranraer, and again, that is a really, really, that's a lovely run, In retrospect, I wouldn't have gone in a tractor, but that was all we had.
You famously then managed to get yourself and the tractor onto the ferry to Arran by disguising yourself as an adult and speaking in a very deep American voice. Can you still do that voice if required?
I think I probably can, yeah. I think I probably can. It's difficult when you're 7 years old, but I was quite tall.
See, I was quite tall at the time, and nobody really looks, I was tall. They hear the voice. I've got a tractor, so they just assume you're an adult, so on you go.
And once you reach the pretty Isle of Arran, fate plays an extraordinary card. You lose control of the tractor on some skiddy weeds and crash the tractor into a car driven by Paul McCartney, who you end up staying with until the age of 12. Can you tell us how it unfolded from the actual impact to the eventual offer of shelter from the Beatle?
Well, I think, what more could he do, really? That I was injured and that, and then it was kind of against my will, because I know you're not meant to say this, but I'm not the most massive Beatles fan. And I think that's probably what he found quite attractive, in this child, because I sort of said to him, I wouldn't be rude, but he was like, oh, do you want to come and stay and we can play music? And I was like, oh, but are you going to play Beatles? Because I'm not a big fan. People go, oh, who do you think from that era? Are you Beatles or Stones? I'm Rolling Stones every time, So I was very much like, I'll stay, but I don't want any of, it's all very... It's very unsexy music, I always think. So he agreed, and he actually did agree with me that he thought most of their back catalogue was a little bit tame. you know, and the actual music, he listens to quite a lot of heavy dub reggae. That is actually much more his thing, you know, but they just went with what was the time. So I stayed with him, and this is when he was with Linda, obviously, so it was all vegetarian, as you know, and she's there with her tambourine and that, which they only really did because they had a lot of trouble with seagulls around the area, so she would play the tambourine and that. For a teenager, really, it was a very dull time. I was stuck there with these middle-aged people who said that, you know, oh, we were in a band, and then they would play their music, and I'd go, oh, God, not again. She'd be making her bloody sausages and trying to make you wear these jumpers that they thought looked cool. So I was very glad to get out of there.
And when you were making the deal with Paul about not playing his own music, was it purely anti-Beatles? I mean, did you let him play Wings stuff or the solo stuff?
I don't mind a little bit of Wings, that's what I said to him, you know. And they had some good players then. But really, I thought, you know, he's got to widen the music he's listening to. So, yeah, no, I didn't mind a little bit of Wings, but, you know, Band on the Run, it's a little bit, you know, it's more like what kind of song? It's a bit novelty song, really, you know. And if he would started on that frog chorus, then we were all allowed to just hit him round the head.
And in the year 2012, Paul flies you back to the UK in his private jet for an emotional reunion with your parents. Had Cindy and Colin noticed that you'd been away?
Well, Cindy hadn't, because she was not remotely interested in me. I think she had her own troubles then with Richard Gere. You know, what he was up to. And Colin was very glad of the rest. You know, I think it was hard for him being a single parent and trying to get the donkey, you know, to make some sort of scientific discoveries. So, but it was nice because I'm very fond of my dad. So that was a nice reunion. I think he was a little annoyed with Paul McCartney because, of course, Paul McCartney didn't really ask, you know, can I look after your daughter for a couple of years? So, you know, that was another person disappointed in Paul McCartney.
You find it difficult to settle in, and after Cindy and Colin line you up to join the Philosophical School for Girls, you decide to run away from home and join the circus. The first one you stumble upon is Trapezius Christ, based in the Scottish borders. Now, what was your role in their travelling entertainment machine?
Well, I didn't realise, I suppose I should have done, the clue was kind of in the name, but I didn't realise that they were a Christian circus group. And when you were doing the trapeze, it was all about trusting in God, you know, and they would say, OK, throw yourself off. And I'd say, I think by law we need a safety net. And they go, no, because trust in the Lord. And so, you know, constantly was breaking bones because I had no training, and the Lord doesn't exist. So it was a very difficult time.
After 6 years working at Trapezius, you meet a young Donald Trump, a handsome fire juggler on his gap year before studying home economics at Napier University. Were you instantly attracted to him?
I was. Yes, I was. He did have really the most beautiful hair, and I was attracted to that. He seemed such a nice, simple sort of a person. He just, you know, what he said he wanted out of life, you know, just a little house and not much, and we sort of got on just enjoying simple things together, yeah. Then, to be honest, I grew apart because after a while, simple things are a little bit dull. So I said, well, if you just want to live here, you know, in a small croft, that's not really for me.
And you were together for nearly a year, during which time you wrote the hit top 30 song Inseparable Dreams, which is one of my favourites from that era. Can you remember any of the lyrics?
I can't, because I did take a lot of drugs at that time. So to be honest with you, even if you played it to me, I would probably have no memory.
And that time with Trump comes to an end when you're swept off your feet by a charismatic young cocktail barman called Nigel Farage. Is it true he stopped you writing songs and insisted you become the driver of his horse and carriage?
Yes, he did. Yes, it was quite an abusive relationship now I think about it. Yes, I had to drive the horse and carriage, and I had to speak German. I don't know what that was about, but we did that. And at that time he was a very different sort of person. He wanted to, you know, live life on the road, travelling. And he was the reverse, really. He was very against borders, and we travelled all over Europe in the horse and cart. And then I don't know what it was that suddenly made him change. But, yeah, so that was a strange relationship.
And I've always wanted to ask characters on TV shows, but you can't do that, obviously, because of there'll be no answer. But can I ask you, the horse and carriage driving, is it just reins that you do the driving with, or do you whip the horses as well?
I think you whip beside the horse. I didn't whip, but people who do. When I used to speak to Duke of Edinburgh, of course, he used to do that. He was very keen on the carriages, as was Andy Warhol and Lou Reed. they would frequently join us on sort of, carriage holidays around Europe. And we're all very against, you don't actually whip the horse, you just sort of whip beside the horse.
Romance with Farage dies shortly afterwards when you crush him on the tennis court, 6-love, 6-love. Would you have carried on seeing him if he'd won even one game?
It's very unattractive, isn't it, to play tennis with someone who continually loses. So, no, I think that was the end of it, really. I think I was looking for a way out, and I just sort of said to him, well, if you play tennis that badly, that we have no future.
In the film of your life, after you leave Nigel, you're seen travelling through South America for 3 years selling dry roasted peanuts that you've brought from the UK. Did that bit actually happen, or was that just added into the film?
Oh, that happened because they hadn't got them in America. That was a British thing. I don't know why they hadn't thought of it the way they do, because I suppose, Americans, they like things to have more fat. They go, this thing has got a lot of fat in it. How do we make it have more fat? It was very alien to them to go, well, this thing that's got fat, we found a way of not adding more fat. So it's the dry roasted peanut, which really is why I think they didn't take to it at all. They were like, well, what you've done is ruined something that we were enjoying and that got us all to a nice early grave. So, I travelled around and that was lovely and I met some very interesting people. But, that was it, really.
Your first encounter with real showbiz actually happens on that same trip in Uruguay when you're given a late-night radio show. Why do you think it was so successful when you couldn't speak a word of Spanish or understand any of the callers?
Because I think people they think that you say what they want you to say. That's what it was like, especially because it was a late night show. So people are ringing in, they're lonely, they're drunk, they're sad. So this woman who, all I could say was see, that's the only thing I knew. So I would listen. But of course I wasn't really listening because I had no idea. But I would just make noises and go, and people thought I was the most empathic, thoughtful person in the world. Like, they absolutely loved me. They loved that I didn't judge. They loved that I didn't interrupt them. I didn't comment on what they had said. I would just say, see, and I would say it in that sort of way. And so people found it very soothing. People felt that they could open up. So what was actually successful was that people would then tell me all sorts of stories about their lives. They would unburden themselves. The president of Uruguay at that time, he came on, said how unhappy he was in his marriage. And because I didn't say anything, if you keep quiet, people will just keep talking. So he said how unhappy he was in his marriage, right? And then the whole country got involved and was like, well, we want the president to be happy. So then they sort of, I suppose, chased his wife out of the country, really, which was it wasn't really what I was planning, because I thought she seemed quite a nice woman. Not that I have any idea, because I didn't speak whatever they speak there, so I didn't know. But that was what really brought it to fame, was that, the president is asking this woman for advice.
And I forget, Jo, who was the president of Uruguay at that point?
Charles Fogarty.
Yeah, of course. And he was president for 8 years, as I remember.
Was he? Right.
A good friend of Rupert Murdoch, who also happens to be holidaying in Montevideo at the time, and offers to, as he describes it, super launch your career. Robert finds you incredibly funny over a dinner of ox meat and vegetables and immediately books Murrayfield for your first show. Now, that gig sold out in the end, but how many flyers did you have to hand out?
Well, I don't know how many it seats. Is it about 40,000 or more?
I think it's about 67, 70,000.
Well, that was why we had trouble then, because I seem to remember that we had 40,000 leaflets printed, so we were a bit short then on that. But that was where I started the hopping, because that's a big stage to come onto. And if you don't have a band or anything, that's a long time, people just watching you. So that's when I started the hopping, which, everyone was like, well, what the hell is this? This is new. And that kept people quite entertained. I think the first 25 seconds went very well.
And was it a tough gig with no jokes at all?
Oh, yes, it was. I have no idea what it was doing. So, no, I didn't. I had possibly three routines. So I just did those over and over again, which actually went better than you would think, because there were some people there who thought I was doing some sort of alternative comedy, and they said, oh my God, it's so funny, the more she does it and the more angry the audience is, the funnier this is. But actually it was just a lot of very angry Scottish people.
And sorry, were you using the routines that you described? Were you using words, or are these hopping routines?
Oh no, I am using words. I am using words. I didn't overdo the hopping. I just did that at the beginning. Now I think about it, I should have done a lot more hopping because they did like that at the beginning. Because when I hopped off, they didn't clap or anything at the end.
And who was the support act for that gig?
I didn't have a support act. I didn't know that you needed one. People did offer me support acts. There was a few, up-and-coming comics at that time. There was also, I know Ronnie Corbett had said he would like to do it. He was around Edinburgh, that's where he's from. And so he was visiting and he said, oh, well, I'd love to come and just sort of, help you on your way. But, the arrogance of youth, I thought, oh, what can I learn from Ronnie Corbett? So I said, no. I said, I don't want him.
But is it not true? In his book, he says that you said he could perform, but he couldn't bring that chair that he tells the stories in.
Well, I don't want to badmouth him, but he really is a nasty man. And that's not true. I said he couldn't come at all. So if he said, I said he could come, but not with the chair, then I'm afraid he's lying. I said he can't come at all.
Okay. You start at the top, Jo, and you stay there, initially performing under the stage name of Jojo Sutherland, whilst wearing a blonde wig. But why did you change the name to Jo Caulfield?
I think it's a much better name. I think, at first you don't quite know, and I couldn't remember what my real name was because my upbringing was so confusing. And when Paul McCartney tried to adopt me, and I thought, I don't want to be Jo McCartney. For some reason, I thought that sounds like an IRA terrorist. And there was a lot of that about then, so I thought Caulfield sounded sort of in between everything, I don't know. And then I remembered, that is my name. So that was weird. So I'd actually chosen it and then went, oh my God, it turns out that actually is my real name.
And final question in this section, Jo. You've now made a personal fortune over £120 million. Why do you always wear the same green jacket every single day?
It's a hard one because I don't really think about it. And I don't want people to know because people will say, you probably even will think it's weird. But that green jacket is my protection because I know that people, when I say people, I mean Russia and QAnon, all of these types of groups, they try to get to you. And so my jacket it has like a firewall, like as though I were a computer. It's got like a firewall so they can't get to me. So that's why I wear it. But, if you say something like that, people will go, she's loopy, but no, that's the reason.
Finally, we reach the stand by or catch a ship section. This section is basically quotes that you've said, Jo, throughout your life, and I'm just really wondering if you still stand by them or if you want to distance yourself from the quotes. Mm-hmm. You can explain yourself or you can simply say stand by or catch a ship.
Right.
It's entirely up to you whether you want to expand or not. But these are 5 things that you have said in your life. Number 1, as you said this in 2009, I buy a new seesaw every month and just leave it in the shop.
Stand by it.
Number 2, dogs are funnier than men.
Catch a ship.
Number 3, I regularly give olives to beggars. They like them more than money or other foodstuffs.
I don't know why people had a problem with that. Because I've never had anybody refuse olives when I gave them olives. So I stand by that.
Number 4, the most popular Joes in the world are me, Pesci and Brand in that order.
Stand by it. Who on earth would argue with that?
And is there anyone on the outskirts of that chart, Jo, that you see as a competitor?
There's Joe Pasquale.
Number 5, and finally, the world would be a better place if there were no Scotch eggs.
I did say that because of the bad Scotch egg. That is the problem. Like a good Scotch egg is so rare. People go, oh, do you like a Scotch egg? And generally you should say no unless you can really get up close with that Scotch egg, unless you can ask who made it. Like a homemade, like proper Scotch egg is one of the most delicious things in the world. But they're so rare. So I just want to warn people, generally, if anyone offers, say, thank you very much. I'm not dissing your culture, but no thank you.
Lastly, you've told me that at the end of your life, you want to be buried in a turkey suit rather than a coffin. Why is that?
I don't know if I did say that. I think I said donkey, pantomime donkey outfit.
Are those not usually for 2 people, though?
Well, yes. Whoever my partner is at the time will obviously die of grief.
Immediately?
Immediately, yes. I would think so, yes.
And the tune you've chosen at the end of your life to be playing as you are rolled into the ground with your partner in the donkey suit is 100 Moons by the Burning Thompsons. Why have you chosen that track as your final song?
I think because it'll irritate people. Because they'll go, oh, what is that song? That's a weird song to pick. Have you heard that song before? No, I haven't. Why didn't you pick something that we could sing along? And then, they can't even remember me by it either, because they'll go, oh, what was that song she had at the funeral? Oh, I don't know. So generally, it'll cause a feeling of irritation, which is what I enjoy.
Jo, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
As the turkey feathers drift off into the wind, we cover you up and wave farewell to the sweet sound of the Burning Thompsons. 100 moons, none in June, 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 100 moons, none in June. Moons, none in June, 100 moons, none in June, 100 moons, none in June, moons, none in June, 100 moons, none in June, 100 moons, none in June, moons, none in June, 100 moons, none in June, 100 moons, none